Welcome. In this lesson, we will be starting to separate controllers from the driver, so our system will be more modular. Because now we have hard-coded our fill image component into the driver, and we would like to separate it. So in the future, we can write different components, which will be changing different stuff, and still will be driven by our driver routine. So let's get started. Click on IEnumerator folder. Inside, create new folder called controller. Inside, let's create new C# script called controller transform. Let's open it. Clean the file. First, let's create enum called animtype, which represents type of animations our controller can change. So let's include position, rotation, scale, and rect position for driving rect transform inside canvas. Now inside controller transfer class, let's add these two variables, public animtype, and public transform, myTransform. Now let's create private method called setTransform with a vector3 parameter called resultVector. Inside, let's create switch by writing switch and double pressing tab key. And we can put the animtype inside it. Press enter and switch will be filled automatically. Now to change animtype position, let's write myTransform.localPosition equals resultVector. For the rotation, myTransform.localRotation equals quaternion.Euler with the result vector as parameter. For the scale, let's write myTransform.localScale equals result vector. And for the rect position, let's write myTransform, and we need to cast it to rect transform. And also put everything inside round brackets, so we can access the rect transform properties and write dot anchored position 3D equals result vector. We can clean the switch statement. Let's get rid of default section. And let's make the switch statement more compact. Now we have a specific method for this controller called setTransform, but we also want some universal method which each different controller will have. And by this universal method, we can still call the specific one. So let's create public method called setValues with a float parameter called result. And inside, let's create vector3 result vector equals new vector3. And let's put result into all three axes. And then we can write setTransform result vector. So now when we will be calling setValues, it will be calling specific method for this controller. To finish, let's set the colors. Save the file. And go back to driver. Inside driver, let's create public list. But first, add the namespace using system.collections.generic. The list will be type of controller transform for now, with the name of controllers, which will equals new list of controller transform. Now let's create method where we can change the values of this controller. So let's write public void update controllers with a float parameter called result, and inside let's write for each and double press tab key and fill my controller and controller's value and press enter. Now we need to check if our controller is active. So let's write if my controller.gameObject.activeSelf equals true. And let's call our universal method myController.setValuesResult. Now change the color. And now we need to fill our update controller method everywhere where we was using myImage.fillAmount before. So let's first change it inside our driver routine, but keep the parameter same as it was before. Don't forget also inside while loop. And also we need to update it in our reset progress method. Now we can delete our image variable because we don't need it anymore. Let's save the file and go back to scene. Now select our driver tester game object, add controller transform. Let's fill our myTransfer variable with a *bg game object. Let's change our anim type to scale. And let's drag and drop our controller to the driver's controller list. Let's press play and play forward. And we see our controller work nicely. That's everything for this lesson, so thank you and see you in the next lesson.